You can think of the Ten Commandments as kind of like a new constitution for these people. This is a rehumanization. Basically, all of these things, these commandments, they're predicated on the fact that you shall have no other gods before me. Because when you put some other God before me, what you're doing is you're walking right back into slavery. If I were to change the world church in one way, it would be...
Hey friends, thank you so much for joining us today on Untrained Philosophical Discussionists. My name is Jonny Hanson. Right there's my good buddy Andy Lamb, and joining us today is Pastor Mike Adkins with Grace Church. Thank you so much for joining us today, Mike. We appreciate you, brother.
I'm glad to be here with you guys.
Round two, man.
Looking forward to this. Yeah.
I am too.
How many repeat customers do you have here?
Lots.
Do you? Okay.
Well, no.
Just Elijah.
Just Elijah.
Yeah.
Me and Elijah.
Oh, Paul
Paul.
Madison's been a repeat customer.
We've had a few.
All right, good.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
We did a second one with Paul talking about demonic. He's had some, as a missionary, he had some experience with
I bet.
dealing with demons.
Oh,
and
some
so-
spooky
Is that
stuff
right?
we talked about. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got one of those experiences.
Is that right?
I never want to have that again.
That story is wild.
It is wild.
Oh my gosh. Let's do an off-camera talk about that.
We'll do that.
Yeah. It's
So, Andy, you're going to start us off here. You have some context, some history to go over, and then...
Yeah, I think it's super important as we look at this very first commandment that we have historical context. Why was the Ten Commandments even given? Who were they given to? What was going on before that? So we look at the ancient world. Egypt, at this point in time, was the big player on the scene. And so we have really two things that we're looking at is happening with the Israelites. Why they are in Egypt is they are part of the Egyptian culture, which is polytheism, worshiping gods like Ra and Osiris, and they would worship the Nile River. Mm-hmm. Then when they come out of Egypt, they're in pagan lands, and they're dealing with these gods like Moloch and Baal, and so they have two different people groups that are leading, they're being part of their communities.
Dozens of different gods that they're
Yes.
being infected, at least with those understandings of what those religions represent.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. So they come up out of Egypt. Moses comes on the scene, departs them out of the Red Sea. They get there. Moses goes up on the mount and comes down with the Ten Commandments. And this is where we are with the Ten Commandments. In Exodus 20, verses 1 through 3, it said, "And God spoke all these words. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me."
Yes. Yes.
And that's where we're at.
Yeah. You know, I love the very beginning of that because it doesn't actually start with command. It starts with relationships. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of slavery. And I think it's really important to remind, everybody listening that if you've been a slave for a long time, for 400 years, your family, your nation has been a slave. That slavery doesn't leave you when you walk out of it. You can think of the Ten Commandments as kind of like a new constitution for these people. This is a rehumanization of all of these people. It really is, because he took them out of Egypt, out of slavery, but he hasn't taken the slavery and Egypt out of them.
Great point.
Oh, that identity thing they're carrying around.
That's it.
I love that.
And that's why he starts the Ten Commandments with this, I am the Lord your God. This is my identity. You're my people. That is your identity.
Yeah, putting it upon them, that new identity of him.
That's right. And so he's going to spend, the time unwrapping these things. Basically, all of these things, these commandments, they're predicated on the fact that you shall have no other gods before me. Because when you put some other God before me, what you're doing is you're walking right back into slavery. And slavery really is the pull of the heart of mankind. Like we're drawn to all kinds of slavery, all forms of slavery. But for them, leaving Egypt after 400 years, slavery is all they knew. That wasn't like the exception to life. That wasn't the really bad conditions they were living in. It was life for generations of people. And so they developed culture inside of that. They developed systems inside of that. They developed responses inside of that. All of that was who the nation was. And so now God would give them this brand new constitution and say, these things will keep you free. But none of the commands that follow the first command, you shall have no other gods before me, actually matter at all. And they won't be followed if you don't have the first one, because the first one is based on relationship.
What's really interesting about what you said there is when you look at the Israelites, when Moses is up on the mountain, they're complaining. They're like, "Why? We should just go back to Egypt. It was at least better there. We had meat there, right?" They just kept complaining is that it'll be better in slavery. Reminds me of that book that Aaron Moore had us read.
Yeah, Sebastian Younger and its tribe.
So he was talking about these people that were kidnapped by the American Indians.
Yeah.
and they would be rescued,
Yeah.
and they would go back.
Yes.
Now, there's some context to that. Ultimately, the unity of these smaller tribes and the way that they delegated responsibility in there made the people that were even kidnapped part of their culture immediately. As long as you weren't killed by them out in the field, if
Right.
you were brought back in, you were automatically given responsibility. And it wasn't like you're in chains and you're beaten daily. It was you had responsibilities of things to do, and you became part of that culture.
Yeah.
And then they'd go back to civilization,
Yep.
as it were, and they wouldn't feel like they were part of their family anymore. And they'd frequently, even Benjamin Franklin or George Washington, one of the two, writes about these kind of instances happening in that book.
Yeah.
And people would just go right back to the tribe that they were in and spend the rest of their lives there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly right. I mean, even when Abraham Lincoln freed slaves, there was still a form of serfdom that was after that. So
Oh my
people
gosh,
continued
great
to
point.
work the plantations. and
Yeah, they were
things like
indentured
that.
servants.
They were indentured servants. That's right. And indentured servants basically means you're slaves, but we're going to do the minimum to not.
I'm going to give
harm
you
in that
a
way.
debt that you could never pay,
That's right.
but I'm going to let you work for me to slowly pay it off,
see,
and I'll
all-
put you in a house.
That's exactly right. All of that has to do with freedom, and I think what people forget, and because we think about freedom, we think because we're Americans and our civilization is based upon the individual rights of a person, right? But I think when we think of freedom, we forget that there is a weight to freedom. And there is something to, and it's not good. I actually think it's one of Satan's traps for those who have been indentured servants or people who have been slaves, even the Israelites coming out of Israel. It is that when you're told what to do and you have specific metrics and specific goals and you must do these things, there's clear punishments and there's clear rewards.
Yeah.
You don't have to think a lot.
Sure.
You don't have to feel a lot. All you do is show up, do what's right, and everything is approved. And so there's a kind of payback, if you will, for those to surrender their will and to say, I'm just going to follow the rules of our master, the Egyptians. I'm going to follow the rules of the Egyptians. I'm going to follow the gods of the Egyptians because that's part of the deal, right? And in Egypt, they didn't just have polytheism. You said hundreds. I think it's possibly thousands of gods in Egypt. I mean, they had a god for everything. There was a god for corn. There was a god for the Nile. There was a god for love. There was a god for war. There was a god for everything. And this was not just Egypt. This was all of the surrounding nations. Our hearts are drawn towards multiple gods because those gods are transactional by nature. Those gods
We
are
can
all
earn their
about-
favor.
We can earn their favor and we can earn their blessing. We can earn their favor, we can earn their blessing. And so if I give the right sacrifices to the right God, then man, my crops are going to be great. They had no idea of science or anything in the background. They just thought correlation was causation.
Yeah.
That man, this year we had it just so happened that it rained a lot and you did all these things, but man, I gave great sacrifices this year. Man, Ra must be happy with me, or the agricultural god.
Sure. Or the opposite of it, the crops are low. I must kill 2 of my children next
That's right.
year.
That's right. No, that's right. Sacrifice.
Well, that's the demonic that we see going on in the background of that,
Yeah.
right? And so there's, like you just said, causation equals correlation. Unfortunately, if they just see that happen, then we just continue to do that, and then that's what's taught throughout generations, that this is what you need to do in order to make the crops grow. Why? Because we're dependent upon it.
Yeah.
If we don't have good crops this year, then people die. So
And all of this is identity formation, is what it is.
Yeah.
All of it's identity formation, and that's the trap of slavery. But I think to just kind of nuance freedom for a second, I think it's important to recognize that freedom for us seems like a good thing existentially, but it doesn't always feel good, right? Because when you're free and you have to make free choices, you're responsible for those choices. And so when something goes wrong, it now comes back to me,
Sure.
right? Like I made a mistake because I made the wrong set of decisions and the outcome is poor. And because of that, I'm responsible. And that weight of freedom is often something people try to avoid. And that's why we love to place our hope in other things, right? We love to place our hope in something other than God. But the crazy thing about it is he's like, look, I'm the Lord your God. I'm the one who brought you out of Egypt and out of slavery. So what he's saying is, he's like, I am yours and you are mine. And I've taken you out of this slavery because I'm watching over you. Prior to that, the Bible says that he heard the cries of his people.
Yeah.
And I think we could always say, well, why was it 400 years? Why did it take 400 years for him? But I think this is one of those moments where it's like in the fullness of God's timing, like at just the right time when everything's set up exactly the way that it should be for my people to prosper and to flourish and for my enemies to be taken down because they had not risen to the fullness of their sinfulness, the Amorites, right? So in that moment, God makes the decision. I'm going to listen to them. I'm going to hear them. I'm going to respond to them. And the crazy thing about it was God wasn't going to not physically bless them. It wasn't like he was just saying, when the Bible says there's no other gods besides me, he's not saying you can't be a person of materiality. I mean, he created a material world we live in, right?
Right.
So materiality is good. It's this, but here's the nuance of it all. He says to him, when you leave Egypt, I'm going to give you massive wealth. And you know what happens? They're literally leaving Egypt. Now remember, all of this is like a weird form of slavery, right?
Yeah.
They're slaves in Egypt. But then you have to reverse the equation. Just look to the other side. The Egyptians were also enslaved to having people do all of these things
Everything for them.
Mm-hmm. And so you can imagine they're real human beings, right? There's always a difference between the government and the people, right?
Yes.
And so there were a ton of people who probably felt very appreciative of what's happening.
Yeah.
And so without war, without anything, the Bible says Israel plundered the wealth of Egypt.
Asked
They
them
gave
for
it to them.
They gave them
Yes,
their
they
gold, their
gave them
silver,
everything.
their jewelry.
They walked out with all the bling.
Sure.
They did. And there was no war in that. And that was God's favor on their life.
And furthermore, like all the lowest class Egyptians now have to take up all the slack.
Oh,
because the
it's
Pharaoh
devastating to the
didn't get
economy.
off the throne and go down and start
He's not going to
cracking
farm.
rocks.
He's not going to farm.
No.
Yeah. That's right.
So they had
it was
to either
devastating.
find a whole new slave class or take some of their lowest class people and convert them into the working class.
That's right. Well, this is why Pharaoh, after the 10th plague, the death of the firstborn child of all of Egypt, except for those who put the blood of the lamb over the door stops. This is why suddenly he sees all these people leaving, and it's we're talking. They come in 400 years ago with Joseph, right?
Yeah.
Joseph rises, has this great thing,
Brings his family
multiplies,
in.
but they're leaving with 4 million.
Sure.
So it's quite a thing to watch 4 million people leave, and then all of a sudden Pharaoh looks around. Even after this devastating, plague hits him, 10 of them, right?
Yeah.
He goes, "No, I want him back." And then
we
he
gotta go
pursues
get these
them.
guys.
Yeah, he pursues them. He's like, "I made a mistake. You made a mistake."
Yeah. Who's going to do all the stuff?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
who's gonna
crap.
do it?
We got to go.
Yeah.
What I wonder when I think about what's going on in that time frame is this promise that is given to Abram that you're going to come out with great possessions. You wonder if during this whole time frame as they approach this 400 years, if those words are still being spoken and silent, or around in the community of the Israelites that, hey, God's going to do this thing at some point in time, and then they get to see God come fulfill His promise, and so they're leaving with all this plunder, and they get to go, oh my God. God promised to Abram 400 years ago that this is what was going to happen, and we get to see God's faithfulness through that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because but they're not done with struggle though. I mean,
No.
they're leaving Egypt. They cross the Red Sea into the Sinai Desert, right? Which I'm pretty sure if they knew the outcome of walking the desert for 40 years, which is all of them will die,
Right.
except for like Caleb and Joshua.
It was an 11-day walk from where they were to the promised land, by the way. Like, if they would have been obedient
This is them running around in the desert
for 40 years,
yeah.
it was an 11-day walk for them to get to the promised land had they just obeyed God.
And several moments where Moses is angry when he hits the rock and he loses the ability to go into the promised land, because he takes his staff, he strikes the God said, just, touch it, you have some water. He gets mad, he hits the rock. God says that was disobedience. But it's because, and I don't blame, I think sometimes we have to really humanize the people inside the Bible. We read the stories and we're like, yeah, that's how it, but you put yourself in Moses' place. He's leading a bunch of whiny
4 million people. He's got
whiny people.
And also we bring this up consistently in here. When you read the Bible, you can jump from one thing to the next thing relatively quickly without recognizing that potentially decades have passed. So we're talking about Moses being out in the desert for 40 years.
Yep.
With a 4 million crew of complaining the whole time folk.
Right.
So he's had decades of this whining, and every time he then goes to God, God then provides again. They get a little bit of satiation. They start to fall sort of back in line, and then relatively quickly fall right back off. We don't have any food out here. All right, God gives you manna. All right, well, yeah, we got this bread, but it kind of sucks now. We've had this for months or
anything's
years.
terrible. You can give them prime steak, you can give them T-bone ribeyes every night. I don't want to eat ribeyes every night,
But
man.
every time God comes through, and then he gives them pigeons or whatever it is there for meat.
Right.
And then he gives them water. Consistently, God's showing up and saying in those moments, I got you.
Yeah.
The Bible says their clothes and their sandals never wore out.
Well, there you go, too.
I mean,
Walking around the desert for 40 years and their clothes and sandals never wore out.
well, to give context to that, our good friend Emerson is a runner. He goes through a pair of shoes in his running, and he runs weekly. In just running, he'll go through a pair of shoes once a month, where he says it completely wears out the soles of his shoes.
Yeah.
And these are like $150 running shoes that are probably better made than the sandals, thin little crummy sandals back in the day that lasted 40 years on a continuous walk. You know?
crazy.
Crazy. But we got it. But the beauty of all that is, it's easy for us to sit back and be like, "Oh, Israel, why didn't they just obey?" And then you're like, "Oh shoot, that's me."
Oh yeah.
It's
Well,
it's my life.
Mike brought up the identity thing, and Mike, you came up to
It's Pastor Mike.
yeah, right.
Can you imagine? I just had to do that with him.
Yeah, my favorite joke of that of all time is you're like, "This is my wife Kelly. She calls me Pastor Mike at home."
Sorry, Johnny. I totally threw you off. I totally threw you off.
I'm thinking about identity, and you came up to me at our men's retreat, and when we were all having a conversation at a table, me and some other guys, you pointed out that one of my things that I struggle with, and we've talked about it here a bunch, is like I grew up, and I still have at times, a poverty mentality. Because I grew up very poor.
Right.
We had money insecurities constantly. There were times where we were homeless as a family, and like that stuff still affects my mind in the way that I then see myself as a provider in a household.
Yeah.
If work should slow, I get very anxious, even though we've saved and we've done the right things to make sure that we're on track. Should work that I have slow, it's like I still can fall back into that trap and feel like I'm not worth the things of whatever, and I start struggling in that space inside. And I'm 46 years old.
Yeah.
So it's been decades since I've lived anywhere near that level of poverty. And certainly since my wife and I have been married, we've had great successes financially.
Awesome.
With that being the case, I can totally relate to these guys still struggling and falling back into those behaviors, because it's like it's so deeply can become ingrained. And we're talking these people had 400 years. So that's like, generation after generation of generation passed down this system, like you're stating here, that you're living in, where you have certain expectations, and those expectations, as long as followed, are rewarded. So like you can live inside this paradigm, and you're showing that opposite side of it, where freedom is such a struggle sometimes. And as entrepreneurs, that first time I stepped out and like ran my own business and ran all the risks of this either works or it doesn't. And if it doesn't, like, what do I even fall back on? And building it from nothing and then achieving success, like it takes time to settle into that. It wasn't the first couple of jobs and I go, oh, this is really going to work out.
That's right.
I mean, it takes years of seeing the fruit of my labor that then more stuff provides, and I can start going, okay. And then especially as we're saying here, and the bigger picture here is trusting God with it and saying, you have me here, God. I have enough for today. And I'm just going to trust that you have tomorrow planned too. But like getting there, man, that's easy for me to say. This has taken me a very long time to get here. And I'm saying I still struggle with times where things are slimmer than I'm comfortable with them being, let's say. And have to be reminded by friends and loved ones and my wife, like, hey, here's the truth of things. Recenter yourself. And then I do have to like seek God and like repent. Because these are clearly unfaithful. It's saying I don't trust him in my heart. And like I have to repent of that and then refocus myself onto all the things he has provided and the knowledge that he will in the future.
Well, and that's the system, Johnny. I mean, that's not failure. That to me is exactly what we're supposed to do. I mean, basically what you're saying is there are times where I falter in my faith and trust in God in X, Y, and Z thing. You mentioned money, and that's going to happen. That's what we do. We falter because faith is not always secure. And again, freedom is this weird weight. You mentioned being an entrepreneur. I think the reason why most people aren't entrepreneurs because I don't consider the church a business, but we started it. We started this church 22 years ago.
In the basement, like
Yeah.
And then built to a school.
Yeah.
And only
Yeah.
could use it in certain hours. And now you have your own establishment that's yours and that you're working from. But like,
Yeah.
that took forever to get to that.
Forever.
place.
It took forever. It was 22 years to get to
And
where
like,
we are now.
you said this in your preaching. We talked about it the other day. You were like, there were years and years and years where I was like, all right, God, are we not doing the right thing here? We're not seeing this. We're not seeing A, B, and C. And you talked about this. We said it actually in our last recording, which was you said, God said to you, I'm with you.
That's right.
And like that's again, this piece. Right. It links directly to no gods before me. He's saying, I'm with you. I, your God, am with you.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that's why entrepreneurs, I think it's why there's not a lot of entrepreneurs, because people are afraid to make the choice. Because again, freedom is heavy. The freedom is heavy. And I want to make sure that we say that, because we just think of freedom as this lightness. All my burdens have been relieved. No, it just places different burdens on you. You're always going to be burdened. Everyone's always going to be burdened. Okay. There's no magical place you get into your life. And I think people are always in some pursuit of some kind of magical, easy kind of life where there's no burdens. That's a lie. That's an illusion. It doesn't happen. But I think, when it comes to trust, I like the fact that we started Grace, because we had years where all we had was the Lord.
Yeah.
Like the outcomes were not happening. The things that I was hoping for were not happening. And I think that's
And
true.
you were seeing other people that had started churches the same time you did, flourishing. I mean, just blowing up, And it makes you think, do I not have favor? God, is this something personal? Is this something that's happening to me? And God would always respond, I'm with you, And there's a danger in that. The danger is that when it comes, and it came, I mean, we have like 10,000 people at Grace now.
Right.
That's crazy big.
Yes.
But there's the danger in that is to go, oh, now I'm flourishing.
I'm here.
Now I'm blessed.
And
I'm like, no. We were blessed then because we had Jesus and we had the Lord, and he kept reminding me, I'm with you. You know what I mean? Like, it's great to have the people that we have right now, and I wouldn't want to go backwards. But with that said, you can't trust in the success either. You can't trust in the money. You can't trust in the relationship that you finally got after all this time. You can't trust in the, getting into the right college. All of these things are like this weird test that we're either going to pass or we're going to fail. And to pass that test means you get to enjoy them, but you enjoy the Lord too. You know what I mean? Like that's why he says, I want to be first. I don't want to be second. Because I guarantee if you put Jesus second in your life, he'll be fifth. And one day he's fifth, he'll be 10th. One day he's just going to drop off the list. Yeah. But when you put him preeminent above all things, that means, and here's the great thing about it. Once you put him first in your life, then all of a sudden when you get extra money and you've got stuff, you go, thank you, God. Because that's what it is. It's not, look at me, I'm powerful, I'm strong, I have money in the bank. No, it's thank you, God. You are the one who's you're Jehovah Jireh, you're my provider. You oversee me. You superintend my whole life. Yeah. It makes you enjoy what you have more.
Well, I think the point there you said too is we live in a society today where we have these markers of success. And so we get this instant gratification. And so we look at life and we go, okay, if I just get to here, then I'll be happy or I'll be at peace or I'll have made it. And so I think it's probably in your beginning days of starting the church, it's like, okay, well, you just get to 1,000, it'll be sustainable and, I can breathe a little bit more. And you get to 1,000 and you go, well, no, I just have a new set of things that I have to shepherd over and watch over. And then now you get to a point where you're at 10,000 and it's like, okay, well, now we need a bigger boat. So now I have to now I have to think strategically about what's the next step for me shepherding over all these people. Yeah. So there's never a point
there's always hardship.
Always
hardship. You don't outgrow hardship.
People look at money and they're like, okay, well, if I just have this dollar amount in my bank, then I'll feel safe and secure. And then they get to that dollar amount and they don't feel any more safe and secure than they thought they would.
And we talk about how culture reinforces that. So it's not just that you think that if I have enough money, I'm going to be cool and everything's going to be great. And then it's like culture also reinforces that through all the media that we consume. Yeah. States that like certain levels of economic achievement equate actual success in this life.
Yeah, we talked about this in a message recently. One of the things that I made the distinction was there's a difference between net worth and self-worth. And when you confuse your net worth with your self-worth, everything begins to fall apart. Because you place all of your sense of self in your dollar amount, and the dollar amount fluctuates. And sometimes that has nothing to do with skill or ability. Sometimes that's just the circumstances that we live in.
Yeah.
The best investors in 1928, when the market crashed, they lost almost everything they had. the best investors in the world, the smartest men in the world.
Right.
They lost it all. It was circumstantial. Now, some of those guys jumped out of the window the next day. Others doubled down with a faith for the future that one day things will get better. And those guys were the people who became barons. They were the guys who became like the biggest, the wealthiest, most powerful people in the country. And all it was faith.
Right.
I believe America's going to go on. Faith is it's the most powerful thing that we possess in our life, right? And you can place your faith in the right things or you can place your faith in the wrong things.
But you are going to place faith somewhere.
You will place your faith somewhere. And everybody has faith. You know, we talk about science sometimes, you and I. And I think, you know, because I'm a big science guy too.
Yeah.
I think people are surprised sometimes that I'm a science guy because I'm such a faith
It's
guy.
what attracted me to your church. When
That's
Andy
awesome.
first
That's
invited
awesome.
me,
Yeah.
you did a geological breakdown
Yeah.
of Mount Sinai.
Yeah.
And like, I was like, I've never seen a pastor do this before. I didn't have a lot of pastor history, so you know.
Right.
But
It's a low bar.
it was a low bar. However, the bar was superseded.
Right.
You broke
Right.
it down. You showed pictures. You talked about the topography, and I was
Right.
like, and it totally it made me feel and taste the scriptures you were reading. It like grounded them in me, and it gave so much context to the scene you were setting and the scriptures you were reading.
Well, and I think people are always surprised that I like science as much as faith, because I think somewhere along the way, this is so bent and twisted, Christians started thinking that science was in opposition to faith, and faith is in opposition to science. When the reality is, in the history of science, across the world, all scientists we're talking about, most of the greatest, discoveries in science have been because Christians were at the forefront of that. Because number one, we believe that God was an ordered God, that the world made sense. It wasn't filled with chaos and confusion. We have a God of order. And so we went looking for those things and exploring those things. And so for me, like, I look at that and I think about the way that these things fit together. They fit together so well. But the other side, sometimes science doesn't think that. So it's filled with people who are atheistic. And it's very trendy and it's very cool, actually, which is funny because I don't think of the science community as being very cool. They're kind of nerdy, but they have their own version of coolness.
Yeah.
And that has to do with faith. And they don't want to believe that they have faith in science like we have faith in religion.
Right.
But it's 100%. I mean, at a very, very basic level, you can take something like evolution. You can take evolution and you can say, all right, well, what is science? Science is observable. It's repeatable. You can't observe and you cannot repeat evolution. So it fails the very basic thing of science. You can absolutely say it is a theory of evolution.
Right.
But when we start making facts about things that are theories, now I believe that we change. Don't get me wrong.
Sure.
I just don't believe in macroevolution. I believe in a microevolution. You know, I mean, like, what color was Adam and Eve? Well,
Right.
they weren't Asian, or they weren't Hispanic, or they weren't white, they weren't black. I mean, they were everything. They were all things that became all of us. So we have changed over time, right? So natural selection is a real part of that whole thing. But there's a part on the other side to kind of bring this back to where we are. And that is that scientists, some of them, the atheistic, anti-theist type scientists, basically says, I know for sure there is no God. The agnostic says, I don't know. I think that is intellectually defensible.
Yeah.
I think that's intellectually honest.
Yeah.
Sure.
But to say you're an atheist means I know there is no God. And that is an act of faith.
It totally is.
Just like saying I believe in God
Yes.
is an act of faith.
Yes, it is.
So you will place your faith somewhere.
Yes.
I think about Francis Collins, who wrote The Language of God. He's the father of
Geneticist.
of the DNA,
Yeah.
right?
Human
Unlocking the
Genome
DNA
Project.
strand. And he was an atheist. And then after unlocking it, just come to the conclusion that there has to be intelligent design behind this.
It's just ordered. So ordered. What we are is so ordered. I mean, if you look at the complexity of the eye, I mean, this is why also, we're not walking around on some mountain in the middle of nowhere and find a Rolex watch. It didn't just evolve. Mm-hmm. It didn't just happen. But our bodies are way more complex than something like a watch. Mm-hmm. We don't randomly see these kind of things spontaneously generate into an experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's kind of the beauty of understanding God when your eyes are open to it and you can look around the world for what it is. You start to recognize the complexity. You talked about the eye. We've talked about that on here before. We talk about the way that the earth is made and the positioning of the sun and the moon and just how everything works in specific order to work.
Yeah.
And it's hard to look at that and go, yeah, I know for sure that this has just happened by chance.
Yeah. So just to kind of bring it back to the Ten Commandments for a second, I think what we're saying in essence is you will place your faith somewhere, and we were created to worship something. And so that's why God's like, I need you in the world that's polytheistic, filled with God of everything, that's very transactional. I need you to place me first. And our relationship, while at times it is transactional in the Old Testament, if you do this, I'll do this, right? At times transactional, the root of our relationship is I'm your God. Like, I'm with you. I'm for you. You're my chosen people. You are wanted. You are loved. You are cared for. And that relationship supersedes all of it. And when that relationship supersedes that, it sets the ground for what comes in the New Testament, which would be the perfect relationship, and that would be Jesus, who would not, surprisingly untransactional. I mean, surprisingly so. Like, to be a rabbi and to be a great teacher and to be able to perform every miracle that he wanted. I mean, he doesn't perform. He is the power of God, the radiance of God's glory, the exact representation of his being. And so he is surprisingly untransactional. What he says is, follow me, walk with me, be with me. We never see the disciples taking classes. We never see the disciples, studying theology. No. What we see them doing is watching Jesus.
That's it.
And as they watch Jesus, they see God. And as they watch Jesus, they are transformed. It was being in proximity. So I think like a big piece of even like just going all the way from the Ten Commandments to where we are now, our relationship with God is primarily built on communion. I don't mean like the Eucharist. I mean fellowship with God.
Yeah.
And that relationship started all the way back here where he's like, I own you guys, and I'm gonna send you into this slavery for a season, and this is gonna do something for you. And even now in Judaism, and 400 years later, I'm still your God. I have not abandoned you. I've not left you to this alone. I'm going to take you out of this because I love you and you're my people. I'm bringing you to a promised land.
Right.
And that whole story of the promised land is the promise of the new heaven and the new earth.
Yeah.
That one day we will have another promised land, and that one will endure forever and ever and ever.
Yes.
So as we look towards, Andy brought up the Canaanites, and Andy brought up the Egyptians and their God worship. We don't have idols set up in the city square where we all go sit and, do these perfunctory little observations to it to worship it.
Hold on. I'm going to challenge you on that. Okay.
Please. Okay. Right. Yeah, great.
Yeah. Because I live in Maitland, and one day I like to walk around my neighborhood at night. My neighbor had a big party of some sort. I thought it was a party. So I'm walking by, but they have this big picture window in the middle of it, right? And I had already been invited into their house once, right? We were talking about something. He was wanting to show me something, and they had this little thing over in the corner of their of their family room, but it had a sheet over it, right? And I said, what is that? He goes, you would not like that, and that's all he said. And I was like, huh, that was creepy and weird. Okay, but then I'm walking through my neighborhood, and all the cars are there, and I see his wife, right? And she is holding, like she's out like this. She's holding two flaming bowls, like in her living room with people, and they're all bowing down around it.
What?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What are they doing?
It was a form of like kind of yoga practice, a kind of like thing that you and I like. But see, I'm saying we say we don't have these things anymore.
Okay.
Did this guy know you were a pastor?
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. We had conversations about it. He's like, it's my wife. It's creepy. And he's not a Christian, but he's kind of, he understands religion a little bit, but he's not very.
It's interesting that he knew you wouldn't like it. Like he knew there was something about it
that's right.
He shouldn't be doing.
Yeah.
Well, I think we all have, again, we have something in us that understands. God has like encoded us with some sort of moral understanding that is based on what he wants and what he doesn't want.
That's right.
So when we see a man of God coming in, because people do it to me too. They'll be like, oh, well, you wouldn't want to join us on this. And it's like,
yeah, that's right.
They won't even tell me what it is half the time.
Right.
So I go, how do you even know?
Yeah.
But there's something about, walking with God and having his spirit with you as you go that when somebody's not a believer or somebody is directly doing something that is in opposition to God,
right,
there is a spiritual thing that happens, I think. This is maybe I'm just being cuckoo, but it happens beyond just our conversation. There's something in that spirit realm that is happening that we both can somehow
it's a push-pull.
Have an antenna for.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting because I don't think we're that different. I talk about this a lot. Like, I think we have better technology today,
Right.
But I don't think we're that different than Canaanites. I don't think we're that different than the Israelites. We would worship any god necessary to be able to stay alive.
Yes, but we've talked about this recently on here. We looked at Moloch, we looked at Baal, we looked at this child sacrifice, and people are like, oh, we would never do that, but we do it today with abortion.
Right.
Right. But we call it choice.
And how
is
do
what we call
the
it.
comparison that we make is like, if you look at why the Canaanites, and by the way, the Israelites, who were also involved in it with them, as we see, like the Israelites are looking over the wall down and seeing their own people involved with this Baal worship and sacrificing their children. Why were they doing it? Well, they were doing it, as you said, for economic prosperity.
Molech, when they would sacrifice a child to Molech, it's this like bull god, right? Yeah. He's got these hands that are out like this, they're heated up, and it's got a big brass kind of pot. You would throw your infant child, which would be absolutely horrible, to imagine. But it was for fertility, it was for prosperity, it was for blessing,
And we did the research on this. 97% of all abortions are done because somebody feels they can't afford the child.
Yeah.
For one form or another. Now, there's different excuses,
Yep.
but if you blanket them into what is the actual reasoning behind it, it's economic.
Yeah. Well, it's convenience.
Yeah.
Well, which is
what it is.
I won't be able to go to school if I'm in school.
That's it.
I will not be able to get this position at work. I won't be able to work the hours I need to work.
Yeah.
All of those are economic.
Yeah.
So like 97%. So it's the same thing.
Yeah.
We just call it something else now. It's my choice.
Right, right. And I think, I always want to, whenever we talk about this, I know that, some woman will listen and has gone through that. And I always want to say, there's forgiveness and restoration and there's healing and
God
transformation.
Will redeem you
100%.
Absolutely.
I mean, this is not the unforgivable sin.
It is not.
But it is one of those things that I think we don't really, I think you're right, Johnny. I don't think we process it for what it really is. I think it really is a form of, faithlessness that doesn't track with God. Let's say that you're a Christian and you get pregnant. It happens, right? I mean,
sure, of course.
You're a Christian, you get pregnant out of wedlock. You weren't trusting God for your sexuality, all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Okay, great. So you get pregnant. You have a choice at that point, right? And that choice is, man, I'm going to take this child and I'm going to get rid of this child. Or I'm going to trust that in some way that I don't fully comprehend right now, God's going to meet me 3, 5, 10, 12 years down the road, and God will bring his blessing. Because God doesn't take something that when we start with something broken, he doesn't take, and all of us start broken, right? We have sin from birth.
Every character in the Bible was broken.
Yes. But if we start with brokenness, we don't end with a lack of blessing if in the middle there, what happens is we turn to the Lord.
Yes.
Because he's a good father. And I think in the middle of and a lot of things go into the abortion thing. A lot of young girls are young and they don't know what the heck they're doing with their life and they're trying to figure things out. But trust, and sometimes that trust, almost always, whatever God says, I want you to trust me, he doesn't give you the outcome ahead of time.
Or the timeline that you wanted either. And that's, I think, the biggest struggle for people today, because I have Amazon that'll have something in my house in 3 hours, and if it doesn't deliver today, I'm swiping to the next thing, because that's just the culture we live in today. So I would expect God is going to answer this prayer now. He's going to fix this problem.
And I need it right now. Yeah. Don't you understand, God? I need it now. Because I'm having this feeling, I'm having this anxiety, whatever it is. I need you to answer this prayer right now because.
And that's why it's so important to not serve other gods than him, because I think when you're constantly thinking in all of your decisions, and we should start in the ordinary circumstances of our life, not in these extraordinary moments like I got pregnant or I lost my business or my marriage is falling apart. We start in the ordinary circumstances of life and we say, God, I invite you in to my business meeting today. I invite you into this conversation I'm having with my kids. I invite you into this conversation I'm having with my wife. I'm going to invite you in to the people that I'm sitting with at the baseball field when I'm watching with my kids. God, I need you speaking into me and guiding all my decisions. Because I think what is repeated is what's rewarded. You know what I mean? Like the thing that we do over and over and over and over and over again, whatever it is. I mean, it could be anything. But when we trust him over and we invite him in over and over again, it immediately becomes reflexive so that when a crisis comes, you go, well, I don't do anything different. I'm inviting you in.
We talk about this in, we've taken gun training classes before, and you will fall back to your lowest form of training.
That's right.
So if you're practicing prayer every single day, you're inviting God into everything, that'll become innately in you.
That's right.
Just like if you're practicing pulling your pistol, putting it up, getting sight and shooting, and you just practice that rhythm of doing that. God forbid you ever get put in that situation. That is what you'll fall to, is those direct mechanical things.
That's exactly right. Yeah,
and the same thing applies to prayer.
Yeah, we don't rise to our aspirations. We fall to our disciplines.
There it is.
I mean, that's just what it is. I mean, everyone wants to rise to. We want to like. Man, I like to think I would do this.
Yes.
But what we really do is we fall to our disciplines. What's become trained and what's become reflexive for us.
That's so important for people to hear that. I want to touch on the topic of money with you, because I think when we look at modern day idols, I think the first one everybody always jumps to is money, because I think it's low hanging fruit for it. I definitely think it is an idol for a lot of people, but I want people that are listening to have, how do we understand money in such a way that we understand the necessity of it, the value of it, why it's needed, but then positionally do we put that into our lives that it doesn't become an idol? And if it is, how do I change my mind around that?
That's great.
Yeah. So, I mean, the Bible thinks this is a big deal. Actually, money is a big deal. Like, it actually gives it the term mammon, right? Like a false god, mammon, right? And so I guess what I want to do is I want to separate these two, because I see Christians making errors when it comes to money. They say, I hear people say, we serve God and God alone. And yes, that is true. We serve God alone. But there is this weird Jesus and me kind of Americanism that's not across the world. And even God did not approve of this. I mean, there's Adam in the garden with God, and when he's in the garden with God, God says it's not good for Adam to be alone, right? And so you think, well, he's not alone. He's walking with God in the cool of the day, and even God says, I'm not enough for Adam alone. Like, so I want to create Eve, and she's going to be a helper suitable to him, right? All of that, all the stuff that comes along with that. I think one of the things that first we want to start with is just recognizing that finances and money and materiality are not bad things, right? Like, for example, when God said, I'm taking you out of Egypt, he didn't say, I'm taking you out broke. He said, I'm taking you out and I'm going to give you the wealth of Egypt.
Right.
Every one of the covenants, the Abrahamic, the Noahic covenant, the Mosaic covenant, they all come with physical prosperity that come along with them. Now, we're not those guys who like believe in prosperity gospel, because again, that's very transactional. If I pray this prayer, if I sow this seed, then I'm going to get back more. The only person who gets rich in that is the pastor. Right. The other side of that, though, is that Satan's lies are so close to the truth, and that's what makes them effective.
Yes.
Because you'll see that when somebody gets their finances right, and I always talk about three things. You should save, you should give, and you should invest. If you're not doing one of those three things, all three of those things rather, and you're doing one of them, it's going to mess up your life. So you need to think about money.
Is there an order of those things, though?
Yeah, it's the first fruits concept inside the Bible. Is this a law? No, but it goes all the way back to Abraham himself. When he wins this wars, he comes and he meets a pre-incarnate Jesus, a theophany, right? Jesus comes, and he basically Melchizedek. Melchizedek. And so when he comes, he gives him a third of everything that he had, not just a third of like the income that was plundered, but of everything that he had, what he had before and afterwards. And so the tithing part of that whole thing, the first fruits thing, is God, and this goes even back before that. It's Cain and Abel. You know, you've got Cain, you've got Abel. Cain gives an unsatisfactory, leftover sacrifice, whereas Abel gives the best of everything that he had. And so God looks at Cain and is like disapproving. And he looks at Abel and he says, I approve of you. Why? It wasn't the amount. It was the heart. It was the heart behind it. Yeah. It's like, am I giving God my best or my last? And I think it should be giving, it should be saving, and it should be investing. It should be in that order. And when it's that order, that's what brings blessing and order to your spiritual life. It also prevents you from becoming like a massive materialist.
Right.
Because it's all mine. None of it's mine.
Yeah.
None of it's mine. It's all God's.
I think that's the heart posture. I think that's where it becomes an idol when we look at it and go, this is mine. I worked for this. And yes, you did, but it's because of the fruit and blessing of God that you have all that. And so that's
absolutely
when you change your mind frame from this is mine to this is his, I'm just stewarding it.
Yep.
It becomes easier for me to sacrificially give.
Yep.
We've repeated your phrase on here so many dozens of times, which you go, hey, if you give out $100, you're out $100.
Yeah.
I'm not saying God's going to give you back $100.
Right.
He's not going to give you $200.
Right.
When you give 100, you're out 100.
Right.
But in my experience, so speaking of my own personal experience, you know, when I went to rehab to stop drinking.
Yep.
And I learned about Jesus there. And the guy who was teaching me, this guy Jack, he encouraged me. He said pretty early on, he goes, "Hey, you're going to want to start tithing." And I was like, "I make $20 a week."
Right. Yeah.
That's going to be tough. And he goes, "You're going to need to go ahead and tithe, though." And he goes, "I want you to know that in my experience in all my 40 years of being a Christian, whenever I give," he goes, "I don't know why this happens." And he goes, "I'm not saying that it's directly correlated to this amount to this amount."
Yep.
But he said, "Whenever I've been faithful with God, he's been faithful with me. And I've accumulated more than I could ever understand from the place I began at."
Amen.
So I started giving 5 of my $20. When I met my wife, we tithe, and we've tithed the whole time. And we reevaluate our finances now as we have different things in life happen.
Right. Yeah.
And we're if we go through the timetable, and you've known me the whole time I've been with my wife, our finances have radically and fundamentally changed.
I'm so happy about that.
And like, there's been times
because you ordered them right.
You know, it's and you've said it like this before. You say, take a step of faith and donate, and then take one more step beyond there and donate that amount. And like, when we do that, God shows up right there.
100%, because that's faith, right? So you could have somebody who's very wealthy and they could give 10% of what they did, and it means nothing. You know, like there's no real sacrifice to that.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes what it really is about is it's about taking that step, because in that step you have the faith part of it, the necessity of God to show up to provide for you. But I think when you're giving and you're saving and you're investing, it brings order to your finances. Why? Well, because every single time I got a raise, this is what I did. I saved. I gave more. I saved more, and I invested more. In the process of doing that, it puts your finances again at the forefront of your mind, right? So that whenever I get something, I'm like, I remember the Lord in this. I remember the Lord in this. Most people never think of the Lord when they get something like big. They think, how can I spend this? And the problem with that is you take, and we talked about this in church, right? So you have this income, right? And you have this amount of money, rather, and you have this amount of bills. Well, as you do this, often your lifestyle starts chasing it, right?
Of course.
And so really, you don't get any margin in life. You're always feeling pressured. You're always feeling, I don't feel pressured. You know, I'm not one of those prosperity gospel guys that makes millions of dollars, but I get paid well, and I don't have a lot of money worries. And the part of that is because of what you said. I've spent some time. I spend a lot of time giving, saving, and investing. I love investing. It's kind of a hobby.
And starting at that place when you were in a tiny little church that, you know, you broke off with some buddies to start a church, and there was nothing, and you're still tithing then, I'm assuming.
100%. We've
it's
never not
in
done
those
that.
hardest times when that 10% means everything.
Yeah.
And 11% is like unbelievable. And like, what are we going to do for this and that? And then when God shows up in that place where you are impoverished, that's where you start building those fundamental truths that say, I can rely on God to provide, because somehow that week when that much I gave felt like I'm not going to eat a meal, I ate a meal every day. And that is everything right there.
It just puts God again at the forefront. I mean, this is again our commandment. You know, when you have no other gods in front of Him, mammon doesn't become your god, but it becomes your blessing. I mean, one of the things we see in Scripture very clear is that God gives some people wealth, great wealth, but He does not give them the ability to enjoy it. That's a tragedy.
Yeah.
I mean, to have a bunch of stuff and then just sit around with anxiety all the time, worrying about it and fearful and frustrated by it, that's a waste. But I would tell you that if you did those 3 things, you wouldn't have that fear anymore.
How many wealthy people commit suicide?
Yeah. Wealthy people, especially the higher you climb, you and I would think, because this is how America, like this is the lie of America, right, is that the higher you climb economically, the more you'll be happy. Now, there's some research that says something like that, you know, but it's usually down here. Like if you move from $20,000 a year to like 150, significantly improves your happiness. Why?
I'm here to tell you that works pretty well.
Yes, it does. Well, it does. It does improve happiness because it's improving your circumstances. Now you have basic stuff that you've got your house.
If I blow a tire driving to work,
you're not going to freak out.
I don't have to go. This is an impossible thing for me to fix.
That's right.
Now it's like I get all 4 tires fixed.
Yeah, but now the question becomes when I go from 20 to 150, where am I going to set my standard of living to? And that's where people go wrong. It's now I'm making 150.
They start setting they're living at 175.
Right.
Yes.
So now they still have the same financial problems they did at 20.
Yes.
They just got nicer stuff.
That's right.
But it's still the same anguish that I feel day in and day out, that I'm just one bad thing away from my entire life unraveling right now. So it's just figuring out where do I set my standard so that
and again, it's like you lose the blessing of finances. Again, God gives materiality and he gives blessing financially to people all throughout every covenant, all the time, and yet we mistreat it. It's just like anything else. Anything can become an idol. An idol is anything that competes with your affection for God. Right? An idol is anything that competes with your affection for God. So for many people, man, that's it. And the crazy thing about it is every idol demands a sacrifice. And so we've got people right now who are making, $300,000 a year, but they're like, I need 5. No one needs 5. I'm not saying it's bad. It's fine if you have more than that. I'm just saying, like, nobody needs 5. So you've got a guy who moves from 3 to 5, but he went from working 40 hours a week as a physician to working 75 hours a week. That's the sacrifice that your idol demands.
Yep.
He's like, you will give me your life. And I think we see that not just with money, but we see it with all kinds of other things. The sacrifice of the relationship God, the one that says, if I don't have the right person in my life, if I'm not married, if I don't have this relationship, if I don't have that girl, the sacrifice there is, man, you're going to live in fear all the time, all the days of your life. What if she leaves me? What if something happens? What if the relationships break down? I'm going to be lost without her. I'm going to be lost without him. It's not true. Because if you have first God and you seek first God above all things, you have him no matter what circumstances happen. We can't control what happens to us. We can control what our response to that thing is. And it's much easier to control our response to what it is if you know that you have a sovereign king who controls the whole world on your side.
Go ahead.
Yeah. How do you go about then? I think this is a great transition point to a thought I was having earlier, which is how do you go about prioritizing God, wife, children? Because we see so many people that they put all their hope in their kids.
Yep.
If you're a single mother, single father out there, you might be living your life for your kids.
Yep.
And then what you'll see on the other side of it sometimes is even a married couple, the woman will kind of direct all of her attention towards the kids and then put the husband below the kids. And then where does even God fit into that thing? Because if God ordered the household to be husband, wife, and then God above that, she's clearly not respecting God. So God's below, children are above. How do you go about
And then there's my favorite phrase of the day, happy wife, happy life. And so we see guys just trying to give and build.
Prioritize their wife's happiness as the ultimate supreme thing in this world.
That's right.
Obviously then what we see as the outcome of that is very unsatiated wives because they're also feeling the tension of disorder.
They're feeling the tension of expectation is what they're feeling. I mean, the reason why that doesn't work, and it doesn't work for pastors, by the way, when you exalt pastors that way, you should honor pastors. That's what the Bible says. You shouldn't exalt pastors.
Yes.
And it's weird, the things that people do with pastors. They do, sometimes it happens with
that whole honor culture.
It's dark, man. Honor culture
Not my favorite.
is dark.
Doing honor culture is whenever a pastor walks in the room, everybody stands up as if they're like,
okay.
Yeah.
There are pastors in America who demand that. And it is shocking to me. I would say if you're listening to this and you're in that church, you need to leave right away. Because, again, everything's nuance, right? Pastors are supposed to be honored. Elders are supposed to be honored. But what does that mean? I mean, if you're a godly man and somebody honors you, you return the honor. Mm-hmm. You don't just say, you're right, I deserve all of this.
Yeah.
That's not the Lord's servant.
Right.
That is not the Lord's servant.
There's no humility in that whatsoever.
We see a great example of that in Revelation where John the Revelator gets these words from an angel and he immediately, this is John who's experienced all these amazing things on earth.
Yeah.
He has this revelatory moment where he's kind of called up and he starts worshiping this angel and the angel's like, no, not me.
Yeah.
And we see what that response needs to be if it's anything but God.
We see that with Paul. We see that with Paul.
Yeah.
There's a moment.
That's right.
Yeah. Paul's out there preaching and people are like, these are not the words of a man. These are the words of God. And he comes off the platform and tears his clothes and says, no, this is not what we are. I mean, that's what any good Jew would do in the day. I mean, this is the opposite of what Nebuchadnezzar did when people were like saying the same thing to Nebuchadnezzar. They were saying this man's wisdom is like God. I mean, just like imagine a leader that you always had to flatter. Imagine a leader that you always had to flatter.
Okay, Pastor Mike.
Okay. Imagine a leader you always had to flatter in order to be in the good graces of him, and that was Nebuchadnezzar.
Yeah.
Nebuchadnezzar was crazy, and then the Lord struck Nebuchadnezzar. And Nebuchadnezzar ended up like eating from that grass of the field like a wild animal until in his heart he said, "You are surely the God above."
And he restored him.
And then he restored
And he restored him. Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
We
So
were
how
not
do
meant
we-
to be worshipped.
So how do we go about ordering this family structure then?
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier about
Or
you know,
like
the-
reordering if you are disordered now, especially
Yeah.
for people that are listening. It's like some people are disordered. We know people that are disordered that we've had to talk to and kind of walk through. Why do you feel that way? I've certainly done it in conversations with guys. What you said this, and I'm thinking of someone in my mind right now, but like that thinks that they have to have this woman and they're structuring their belief on the woman they need to have, that she's going to be this absolute beautiful, and they're just looking at all these superficial things and none of the internal things that are actually going to be rewarding, at least in the way that it seems to me.
And she's going to fulfill me sexually in all the ways that I want done.
Of course. But like it is something to do with like a lack of their own personal identity. So they haven't placed God first and then what God says about them, that says that if I get this hot woman and then I'm walking her around, everybody's going to respect me and think I'm awesome and think all these positive, are you familiar with this? Think all these positive things about me. I mean, I've fallen into this trap when I was younger before I knew Jesus, but like they're setting up this paradigm of like very unconsequential things as we age in life, and like beauty falls away, as Solomon says. It's like, what are you actually building your hope on here, buddy?
Yeah.
How do you go about organizing this to like explaining it to someone besides being condescending like me? Sorry, I am.
So I think it depends on how it's disordered, you know, and kind of, I mean, and it depends on the definition they're using for family nowadays. That's obviously something that's shifted significantly as well.
Gosh, great point.
But so I think though, the best way for us to be able to talk about that is, I think men were given the spiritual leadership over the home. And so what I want to say about that is, I don't mean that in any kind of like misogynistic kind of like machismo way, because I think the way that Jesus led was not like that. I mean, if husbands are to love their wives as Christ loved the church, how did Christ love the church? Sacrifice for her. Yeah. And I think that's the big thing. So whenever I think of like manhood, I've always been like how do you dial it down to its most important, your minimum? Like, what is a minimum? And I would say that manhood is responsibility. You know, I think that's what it is. I think manhood is responsibility. It is us taking responsibility for all the things, you know, and that doesn't mean, and I think this is, again, wisdom is always nuance. We live in a world where there's no nuance anymore. It's a world where it's like, it's this or it's this. Even in logic, that's called the false alternative fallacy. It's not true. It doesn't work that way. It's not always this or this. Sometimes it can be this. It's Jesus or nothing, right? Yeah. But most of the time, much of the world is in between the this or that. And I would say that, like, when we say things like men are supposed to be the spiritual leaders and take responsibility of the family, it doesn't mean like your wife can't work. You know what I mean? A lot of guys will take that and go, well, that's what that means. And I'm like, there's nothing in the Bible like that. The Proverbs 31 woman was working.
Yeah.
Like we see that. She was absolutely working.
Yeah. I'm glad you bring that
this
up.
Is such a super like white, old fashioned kind of way of thinking. This is a rich country, by the way.
Yeah.
Because there's no wife sitting in Rwanda right now, you know, or in the past. Sitting at home just like watching television.
No,
there's no such thing.
Right. Even if
she's helping make the family work.
If
like
you go
everyone
back
in the
to
Bible.
like the expansion to the West here in the United States, the entire family work, including children.
100%.
Everybody
worked
to,
to
or
stay
people were
alive.
dying.
That's exactly right. So that's the majority of history. So I think one of the things that we want to do is we want to say, like, is what we're doing with the family, is this what's been normative throughout history? Right. You know? And if you're making demands on your wife that are normative throughout history, I think you have to push back on that and go, hold on, pal, that's not right. And by the way, do you want your wife to work only so you don't have to? You know, that's a big responsibility thing as well. So to me, I would say first and foremost, the guys are supposed to be the ones who start with the responsibility over the family. I think the marriage is always, I keep hitting everything right now.
Okay.
I think the marriage is number one. And the reason for this is very practical. When the husband and wife are in union with each other, the children feel peace.
Yes.
When the parents are bickering and fighting with each other, it sets the central nervous system of the kid on, their sympathetic nervous system is just all dysregulated and fearful. So what we're saying is, even if you want your kids to be the absolute best versions of themselves and you love them so much, the best thing you can give to them is a good marriage, as an example.
That's great now.
You know?
You pulled on the thread of manhood, and we see a lot of this today with so much content that's out there today for guys is
So
like
hard.
The view of manhood is I'm up at 4:30 training, doing jujitsu, and then I'm at the gym, and then I'm out shooting guns later on that day, and it's
There are days that I go do all those things.
There are days, but
admittedly,
but the whole purpose of it is it's somewhat. It's just I still think this off view of what manhood even is. Yes, you can do hard things. Yes, discipline. All those things are good. Yes, all that's well and good. But if that's your whole ideal of what a godly man looks like, then you're going to take this other branch of guys who aren't getting up at 4:30 in the morning, who are solid men of God, but aren't out shooting guns and doing jiu-jitsu. And it's like, okay, well, if that's the standard, then I'm never going to reach that standard. And that's not even the standard that we see biblically. I love the practicality of this. It's just responsibility. Let's start there.
Yeah.
Let's just teach men how to be responsible. What does that mean?
Sure.
And so then if I can take the responsibility part of this, then I have a firm foundation that I can build that man up to be a godly man whose home is peace. Right? Because that's ultimately what it is. It's just I want to create peace in my house, because if I have peace in my house, then my kids get to learn under the right conditions of what this life is supposed to look like.
Yeah.
But
So just like 3 Ps, right? Protector, provider, priest. That's what we are in our family. I mean, those are the things I think that we should be doing. We should be protecting our wives, laying our lives down for her. We should be providing, and providing doesn't mean that like I'll give you an example with us. Kelly has always worked our whole life. In fact, Grace Church would not be here today if it was not for Kelly Adkins.
Sure.
And she still works. She runs half the organization with our executive pastor
Ruff's
running the
a
other
baller,
half.
man.
She is a baller.
Yeah.
And I will say the reason why we'll be able to retire one day is because of her. I mean, we spent most of our life in ministry making hardly any money whatsoever.
Right.
And so the reason why I was able to invest is because both of us were working. We've had that. And I think there is a pressure nowadays for a 2-income family. It's really hard unless you have some unless you're a surgeon or you're an entrepreneur
or you have family money or something.
Or family money. It's hard. I mean, we're moving back towards 2 people having to work in the world right now. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But he needs to take the lead on that and say, and that again, it doesn't mean if she's a doctor and he's a car salesman, it doesn't mean she can't make more money. But he needs to be the one who's not sitting in the background passive. He needs to be the guy who's working, showing up, putting in his best. Yeah. Because I think that sets the standard for the entire family.
How much do you think that we talk about this a lot, 21st century American Christianity is to the detriment of Christianity? Because I feel like we have this weird view of, because we're wealthy, and wealth can be, we have to look at around the world to really understand what wealthy really truly means. But we have advantages here. And so I feel that modern American Christianity is just a warped view of what Christianity really is. Like having historical context and worldly context of what real Christians go through is so important for us always to be looking back of what suffering and the calling of what a Christian really meant.
Yes.
I think we've lost some of that here. And I think that's just leadership too. Of churches. I think the prosperity gospel is one of the biggest perpetrators of that poison upon people, because there's the expectation that because I love Jesus that I should be fruitful, and if I'm not, then maybe I don't love Jesus, or maybe Jesus doesn't love me, or maybe he's
not
mad
fruitful,
at me.
because we are supposed to be fruitful, but rich.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Rich. I think that's right. I mean, I think that's exactly right. There's a massive move right now back to Catholicism and Orthodoxy out there right now. Yeah. And I think one of the things
there's a beauty to it, by the way.
Oh, come on, you know me.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd grow out the beard and be the Orthodox priest in a heartbeat.
Get that.
I'd be there.
They dress real nice too.
That
robe and everything.
When we were first starting Grace, man, we were thinking about being an Episcopal church.
Is that right?
Yeah. That's not foreign to me. I get that. And if there is a day when I believe that is the majority of people and they're going to only hear me in a collar, I'll be in a collar and a robe.
right.
We'll do it 100%. Because I got to become all things to all people to win some.
Yes.
That's what Paul said, right?
Hallelujah.
So I think this orthodoxy thing, I think the Catholicism thing is a response to a culture that's disintegrating in its moral values.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important for us to pay attention to because we've been talking about it as a leadership team at Grace. We are already one of those stranger non-denominational churches because we use liturgy all the time.
Yes.
We take communion and people get out of their seats and they receive communion every single week.
Right.
So that's unusual in non-denominational churches of our kind of. We have modern worship, but we have ancient practices, right? We're in a prayer season right now where people are coming together and praying all throughout the rest of this year. You know, so I think there's some good things about that we need to pay attention to, and we're talking about it as a leadership team. What ways can we turn more liturgical as we move into the next couple of years? Because we think that's important. We don't be trendy, but what we do want to do is pay attention to what the Spirit is doing.
Yeah.
Right. And so, but the downside of some of this, and I think you guys will see this. I think it's a 10-year turn, right? But I think some of these people are moving towards Catholicism and Orthodoxy because it provides the structure.
Yes.
That they need as young men, and young men, they're flocking. That's what it goes back to the freedom thing.
It's disciplined.
Yeah.
It's very disciplined. Again, having it organized and knowing your role and knowing the position and knowing what's expected of you, there's
right.
comfort in that.
That's also why Islam is what it is today, too, though.
This is exactly right. That's exactly right, Andy.
They do such a good job of doing that in the Catholic Church. You
Yes.
know all the
Yeah.
once you get in,
Step up, say this prayer, kneel down, respond this way. I mean, it's very ordered.
10 Hail Marys.
Yeah.
You do your confessions,
Yeah.
all these things that then have outcomes. There is reverence for that. I can understand why young guys
too.
would want to be in that.
Me too. Yeah, I get it. I'm not anti it. I know we're a non-denominational church, but I'm not anti-Catholic. I'm not anti-Orthodox.
Sure.
I've learned a ton from the Orthodox Church.
Yeah.
I mean, my views of communion changed over the years because of I believe in the real presence of Jesus in the communion service.
Yes.
So, man, that is a way in which we unite with our brothers and sisters in Catholicism and the Orthodox Church. But my concern is, I think that some of these folks are going to meet these psychological, emotional needs. That's not a bad thing because I came Christ because I had psychological and emotional needs.
Right. Yes.
But my fear is that they're losing the freedom part of that whole thing, and they're saying, "You guys just tell me what to do and what to think."
Yeah, shackle me with your thing.
I think in 10 years we're going to see that kind of roll back around and go, I walked in a season that I really needed this kind of structure. What I need now is more relationship and connection. Because I do think that's the thing that they miss. The Eucharist, the communion service, in Catholic and Orthodox churches are the centerpiece. Evangelicalism, Bible-based churches, put the preaching as the front.
Is Orthodox transubstantiation?
No.
The real presence?
Yeah, their real presence. And their real presence because what they say essentially is we don't know exactly how. They call it the divine mystery.
Yeah.
That's what they call their church service, the divine liturgy, the mystery of the Eucharist. And so, and I love that. I love that. There's something beautiful about it. So what I'm saying is I think we should learn from Catholicism, and I think we should learn from the Orthodoxy and the higher, more liturgical, traditions of the church. So when you say earlier,
And by those
is American
liturgical things, you're talking about traditions?
yes, traditions.
Some of the things that we state when we recite the creeds.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the Nicene Creed, the Athanasian Creed, the
Apostles'
Apostles' Creed.
Yeah.
Things that we do in our church that are not done in 99% of non-denominational churches.
Right.
Right.
And so Grace is a really weird mix of church. It really is. But what it evolved from Kelly and I as our spiritual lives, changed and took on new meaning over time. The church always takes on the personality of the senior pastor, I think, is what people say, right? But I think, your question earlier about whether or not American Christianity has kind of fallen apart, I think what's fallen apart is, and it's not leading well, is that we have our own little tribes and we don't look to the broader church. This is what I like about being non-denominational. I like being able to look at other traditions and say, wow, I can participate in that. That's good. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. So we have the opportunity to take, and there are good arguments against this, right? But I would argue that we can take the best of Christianity and make it local. If I were to change the world church in one way, it would be there would be no national churches. No United Methodists, no Presbyterians. You could still be Presbyterian and United Methodist. You would just have to be the church in the city. Mm. In other words, the connections that these churches have to each other, it creates
a hierarchy.
It creates a political system
Sure.
that pastors have to do. Like I met an early United Methodist pastor. I was a United Methodist pastor once, and he said to me, he said, "Isn't it great being a United Methodist pastor?" I said, "Why? Why do you think so?" Because I was a young pastor. I was like 27 or something like that. And he said, "Because you can never get fired." And so for him, it was like a job security thing, right? And he said, and he goes, "You'll learn this." He goes, "If you have 4 or 5 years of sermons, you can just go from church to church to church.
Recycling.
And recycling those sermons over and over again." That's just I was 27 and I was like, this is the most hideous, odious person that I've ever met.
Yeah.
I'm just like, you are an awful person. You should not be in ministry at all.
Right.
And one day you'll stand before a holy God and he's going to rip you to pieces for that.
Yeah.
I mean, that is just, it's just so terrible. I think the connection to national churches and things like that is problematic because it exerts pressure on the local congregations.
Sure. How could it not?
What I would rather have is less of a I would like to have more of a Catholic structure. I function, we never call me this, and we're not going to call me this, but I function like the bishop of Grace Church.
Sure.
Because I have like organizational authority. But I think you guys know me really well. I don't walk around like a boss. I don't walk around like, I'm all the, I was going to say something I can't say on the podcast, but I
don't be swearing on here.
Yeah. I heard that you guys.
Jeez Louise.
We clean this studio up,
I heard
buddy.
this. Well, I wasn't going to swear. I was going to pray. But, but I think a lot of that is, I think pastors should have authority in the churches that they're in.
Yeah.
And I think they should be local so that you can deal with the needs in the things. The advantages of global churches are they can send missionaries, they can have seminaries, they can do things like that. I think with all of that, even a local church can send some missionaries, and we can do things like that.
Yeah.
I think seminary training should be involved in the local church and not just at a university level.
What do you mean by that?
Well, Jesus never had anybody take a class.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so what we're doing right now with our young people is we're putting them in ministry positions. They're doing on-the-job training. They're learning. They're growing in their relationship with God, and we're teaching them theology.
And you have a Tuesday morning class that you teach, and as you've done it, it just gets bigger and bigger. Now it's in the actual sanctuary. It used to be, when I first started going, it was in the little room off to the side.
We had 10. We had 10 people when we started it.
Right.
Yeah.
It's great.
So there's a hunger for that locally in our church for men to want to know more about God, not just through your sermons given on the weekends, but like to actually invest and get some of that deeper understanding of God so that they can better lead. And I think that that's everywhere. And I think that's what you're saying by the youth too. It's like they're looking to be empowered. So they're going to a place where they're getting structure. But what you're saying is like if we can focus locally and we can prioritize our understanding of it, and then you, as the guy who's running that place, can empower the people around you, it's going to create this bond.
That's right.
Well, because ultimately, your job is shepherd.
Yeah.
That's your job.
To equip the people.
Equip the people.
That's right.
Right? And so
instead of harboring it all to yourself.
Yeah.
Very often we look at, so why do a lot of churches fall? Well, pride. Look what I built, look what I did. And, and then we have guys that just want to be elevated to some position they shouldn't be. It's what I love the most about you is that on Sunday mornings and Saturdays, like in between services, you're not hidden in some back room. You're out in the lobby, you're walking down the kids when you're meeting and greeting and loving on people.
Even to underline that further, as I was saying before,
I love that too.
That's why you can't have your own green room.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that.
When we went on the men's thing, and I think I've already complimented you personally on this, but I'm going to say it here too. It's like you could be the kind of pastor that flies in on a helicopter to this thing. We've been there for 3 days. You hang out with everybody for a couple hours, give a nice speech before dinner, and then you fly back out.
Right.
But you don't, man. You're there with us the whole time. We're all hanging out together. Every man there who the church has given some sort of leadership issue gets to come to this thing, and then everybody gets to take a little bit of time with you and get to understand you, Mike, not just Pastor Mike, and take that time. And you do that.
Yes.
And that is a sacrifice away from your family for a week in the summer.
It is.
And it is for all of us.
Yeah.
And that's the point. It's like you're meeting us where we're also doing a sacrifice too, because you're just a guy like us. Yes, you have this authoritative position. You've acquired this knowledge that we're all hungry for, but you're sharing in it, and you're sharing in time with us too, which is it's so necessary as men.
And the purpose of all that, to tie this all together, is you're teaching men how to make God the number one priority.
Bingo.
That's it. Yeah, that's
Right?
right.
Because if I can make God the number one priority, it's not that life is going to go with ease. It's just that when life happens, I have a right order that I get to rely on God and know that He says, I will never leave you and I will never forsake you.
It also reflects that you do prioritize God as number one, because you're not, again, you could be the pontificator over everybody. You could be the guy that's standoffish, shows up, delivers a speech, but instead when anybody talks to you, and this is what you're saying, and we're reinforcing this, is like, we're friends.
Yeah.
You're my pastor.
Right.
And I respect you in that position.
Yeah, I know.
But like from the moment I came into your church, I just felt like I can actually talk to this guy like another man.
Right.
And then you always, I know this about you personally, but you always turn things back to God. It's like the minute you receive a compliment, you're going, well, yeah, God's just really placed me in this position and you're always deflecting back to God, as you should be.
Yep.
But I've seen you do that.
Yeah.
So like then all these guys come together that are part of this leadership, and they all see that when they try to, because maybe they haven't had that one-on-one time with you that I've had. Then they talk to you and they see, oh no, this guy truly does have a heart for God.
Yeah.
Where do you think that came from for you personally? To like be able to, as you have had achievements in your life, where some men do step into that place of achievement and start lifting their shoulders up, how are you able to keep yourself centered with God as your number one?
Honestly, I think it's a little bit like you, Johnny. I think I came from such crap that
Good job there.
Huh?
Good job there.
Is that a cuss word?
No, you're good.
Okay, all right.
Nope, that was fine.
I think I came from such crap, my family's crap and my own, that I feel it a privilege to have been rescued by God. So to me, I don't think I ever will get to a place in my life, I pray this too, but that I'll ever get to the place in my life where I'm like, look how awesome I am. Because I know how wretched I am. I know that without I know that without Jesus, I think I'd be dead.
Yeah.
I think I'd be dead. I don't think I would be here. So I do. I was telling the 12:30 services, which is our sixth service, our last service that we do on the weekends. I was telling the 12:30 service this last weekend that, like, when I leave, people are always like, "Are you so tired after that?" 6 services a weekend's a lot to preach live, and it is. It's a ton. But almost always I leave, and I'm just like, "Thank you, God, that I get to do this in my life." I think also the way that He built the church. Like I worked my tail off. Kelly worked her tail off. 70, 80 hours a week building the grace. And there were plenty of seasons where we were like, it's not working. It's not growing. Other people came in, just meteoric growth. And I was just like, what's going on, God? And then all of a sudden, one day, there was 100 more. And there was 100 more. And there was 100 more. There's 1,000. We grew 1,000 people last year. And I'm just like, that is insane, And I look at that, and what I fundamentally go back to is that the churches, we have to do our stuff, right? It's God's power at work in us, the Bible teaches us. But I 100% know that all of our success right now is because of God. And because of that, I know that the Lord can say, I will take this lampstand from you and give it to another if you're not faithful. So I think there's a little bit of an element we haven't talked about, which is I think there's a little bit of fear of God that's healthy.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of fear of God, because it says it 365 times in the Bible.
Beginning of wisdom.
Yeah, it's to fear the Lord.
Yeah, it's the beginning of wisdom. And I think that, I know that God's in control. I don't have doubts about that. I think this is the advantage of growing up the way growing up and then becoming Christians later. I think this is the advantage we have over people who grow up in the church. They just automatically assume that like God is for them, and that all of that. And I think when you realize like there were real world consequences for the three of us that could have. Your skin was falling off your bones.
Yep.
Like your doctor was like, drink again, man. I dare you. Like you're gonna die.
You'll be dead.
Yeah, you'll die.
Yep.
We have had consequences. You and Janelle in his bar. That's him, right?
Right.
And then he's like, man, I don't want these guys in my bar.
Right.
They were too rough for your bar. I'm just like, what the? We were just wild and crazy.
Wretched.
Yes.
And because of that, I think we know the one who has been forgiven much loves much.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of the reason why as well.
That's so true, man. I think that's I think that's why we can put God in the right order. Is I've seen what happens when I'm out of order.
Yeah.
What my life looks like.
Yep.
I know what my life looks like when God is in order. Not that we're perfect by any means every single day. It's repenting from the stupid and crummy things that I still do.
Turning back.
But it's always like turning away from that sinful nature and turning back towards God and being like, God, help me today, make you the priority. Because I think that's the prayer life is, God, I need you to help me see what I don't see. Mm-hmm. I need you to help me make you the priority today. And having that daily conversation with God, because when I stop, when I'm not in the Word every day, I'm not praying every day, like I feel it in my bones, like the world just grabbing little holds of me and wanting to pull me back towards it. And it's like that's that constant battle that I have to be, because I know me. I know my inner workings. I know the sin that grabs my heart. Yeah. And so I have to fight against that every day just to make sure that I don't have any other gods before me.
That's right.
Gosh, Mike, I guess as we land this plane here, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to really unpack this with us. This was fantastic. This went so much better than I anticipated. When we originally pitched the idea of the 10 Commandments, it was like, how are we going to get people interested in this? This is so important, but it seems dated and out of context because it's so old. And it is the Old Testament. We now trust in Jesus. But these do have responsibility in our life right now, these 10 Commandments. And we look at them and we go like, don't commit murder, duh. Yeah. But it's like, put God above all else.
That's right.
And then we just really unpacked here today how important it is that, and how consequential it is when we are actually putting God first, how well your life then works out. Like how well it goes for you.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's like, man, I'm so glad we did this.
Me too. This conversation has been encouraging to me. I want you guys to know that. I love you guys, and I think I'm going to spend the rest of the day thinking about it, and it makes me want to be more like Jesus. And I know those who are listening right now to it, I know it's going to make them the better.
Amen, man.
Amen to that, absolutely. So friends, gosh, thank you so much for joining us. This is the 10 Commandment series. This is part 1, Have No Gods Before Our God. And what are you struggling with? Is there things in your life that you might be prioritizing over God? Please comment, like, and subscribe. But in that comment, let us know what that thing is. You can also hit us up if you have a personal thing that you're struggling with. Hit us up at updpodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to get in the dirt with you, man. If you're struggling with something, man or woman, if you're struggling with something, we would like to kind of give our commentary on it, but we also just want to be praying for you. Yeah. We actively do that. We always respond. So consider just hitting us up if there is something that you're struggling with. And then also join us on Patreon, where we have behind the scenes questions that we do. We have other episodes that we do. I do a short form scripture breakdown there. It's 5 to 7 minutes. They're pretty quick, and they're just kind of little deep dives into some kind of strange stuff that happens inside of some of that older scripture.
Yeah, but really what those are, they're teaching moments to teach people to have a quiet time. So check that out on Patreon. It's really good content Johnny's put on there.
Thanks, buddy. Mm-hmm. And guys, we're just so glad that you joined us today. So thank you so much. And we just want to pray that you have a deep and a fulfilling relationship with Jesus, and that he blesses you all the days of your life.
Amen. And all God's people said.
They said amen.
Hey, brother. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks again, pal.
Oh, Pastor Mike. Sorry, Pastor Mike.
Reverend. Bishop Michael.
All right.
It's great. You guys. That was amazing. That was a lot of fun.